Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our customer roundtable, where we're going to be talking with a few of our customers about how they're utilizing some of our AI-based cameras. So before we get started, let's go ahead and let's cover a little bit of a housekeeping step here. So for those of you that are joining, you've noticed that when you logged in, we're using our GoToWebinar feature to access this webinar. You can join the audio through a couple of different ways. When you log in, you're going to see a gray box, and you can utilize computer audio to run voice over IP. So you can listen to the audio for today's webinar and also see it through your computer. If it's easier for you to dial in via phone, you can actually just select the phone call button, which is pictured on the screen, and you can dial in using the information, including the access code and the PIN that are provided. We are recording today's webinar, and we will send out a copy after the webinar to all registered attendees. That way, in case you wanted to share any of your team members who couldn't attend, you'll have an opportunity to do so. Now, before we get started, and before we actually meet some of our presenters and our customers today, what I wanted to do was we've got a little poll. So I'll have Ryan set up the poll. We just want to learn a little bit more about your interest in cameras and sort of where people are in their camera journey, if you will. All right, so we've got a little poll open there. Please go ahead and feel free to vote however you feel fits where you currently are. Ryan, I think we're good. Can you go ahead and close the poll, please? All right, very interesting. All right. Well, thanks everybody. We appreciate you participating in the poll with us here. We'll look to answer some of your questions, and hopefully we'll be able to touch on all of the points that you have called out here from your poll vote. So let's go ahead, and before we get to our speakers here, I just want to focus on the fact that we're going to be talking with some customers who utilize two of our different AI cameras. We've got one that is an AI dual camera, and this means it has two lenses. That's a forward-facing lens and a driver-facing lens, and also from one of our customers who utilizes what we call our quad camera. And this camera that has, again, not only the driver and front-facing lenses, but also has a left and right kind of lens. So as we're talking about AI cameras, we kind of use that term interchangeably, and we'll do so today. But just so you know exactly what it's tying back to, this is really what we're going to be focusing on. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and let's meet our first presenter and learn a little bit more about him. So Mark, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us all a little bit more about LA Excursions.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the invitation to this webinar. First of all, thanks, Tracy. And well, we've been in business quite a long time, since the early 90s. I bought this company in 2002. And well, this has been the most challenging time of all, of course, because you're driving with passengers, so business is almost non-existent. But we did have a project with nurses, and that gives great feedback on the cameras. I would say by far the number one reason to install these cameras, apart from all the other major advantages, is definitely an accident. In case of an accident, the minute I saw this video of an example of a video of a company pickup truck with two people in it who got hit in the back, and then it's so obvious that the other vehicle just hit him from the back. It's so obvious if you look at the video. And that's the first thing my insurance company will ask every time we call in a claim over all those years is, do you have a video recording? No, we have pictures of the accident after,
Right.
of the other vehicle, our vehicle, and they were at fault and all that kind of stuff. But that's the first thing they ask.
Perfect. Okay, great, Mark. And again, I know one of the things that we talked about was you actually participate in one of the airporter runs. So, obviously there's a lot going on in an airport, when you're trying to get people from the parking lots to kind of the main terminals, and there's always a lot of chaos. But you having, the buses and obviously some of the larger, vehicles as well, I think it's nice to kind of give you that impartial view, right? You're able to kind of record some of these events without people just kind of pointing a finger at the bus and saying, "Well, was this large bus that caused the accident?" So good, good.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah,
And then
welcome.
all the other advantages, and we'll get. I mean, I don't want to hog all the time, so yeah, and of course, all the other major advantages. Just a quick advantage is, for example, I have a driver who's been here for years and years and years, and I always thought, that's a really good driver, until I saw the camera, and he does rolling stops, and he's a commercial driver. He says, "Yeah, but that's legal. We're in California." No, 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 it's not legal for cars, it's not legal for you. And they were not unsafe per se, because
Right.
the inside camera sees him looking left, sees him looking right, sees him looking left again. Excellent, absolutely excellent. But he still does the rolling stop. So there was no danger, but he had a violation. And even though at this low speed, the camera caught it. The artificial
Ah,
intelligence caught it, that it was a stop sign, saw a stop sign, and then recorded that he did not do a full stop at the stop sign.
yep, yep. Yeah, we'll definitely spend more time talking about driver habits, but yeah, you're right. Again, you're not in the vehicle with the driver, and you've got that assumption that everything is going well because nothing bad has happened. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of little things out there that the cameras are very good at catching. Wonderful. Well, thanks, Mark. Glad to have you on the
You're welcome. Thank you.
webinar with us today. Thanks for joining. All right. So from Veterinary Service Inc., we actually have two team members. We have Chris Dorak and Joe Krebs. So Chris and Joe, I'll let you both introduce yourselves and tell us all a little bit more about Veterinary Service Inc.
I'll go ahead and start, Joe, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So this is Chris, as Tracy alluded to, and work for Veterinary Service Incorporated. So the company itself was established in 1960, so we've been around for a while. We are an animal health distribution facility. We have 4 facilities, 3 in California, 1 in Oregon. And our company consists of about 22 trucks, various sizes. We have some tractor trailers, some Class B bobtails, and then some other Class C bobtails, but about 22 vehicles throughout the 4 facilities. And the cameras have been very beneficial in regards to changing driver behavior, right? And ultimately, our goal is to reduce the accidents and keep our drivers safe. So, quick little snippet about
Great.
Veterinary Service Incorporated. Joe, you want to introduce yourself?
Yep, you bet. I'm the operations manager at our Northwest branch up here in Oregon, and so I've got the largest group of trucks in the company. So I've got I've got 4 Class A's and 5 box trucks that we've got running for us, and so yeah, so it's been extremely beneficial for us as we've been able to bring on the cameras to be able to learn more about what is actually happening out there in the field, kind of giving us some insight to behavior, to safety issues, to concerns, and some unexpected items that I didn't even think about, but providing some recognition to some of our drivers as well for a job well done. And so I'm excited to be here today, be able to provide some insight as to what we've experienced so far, and hopefully be able to help out today.
Great. Well, thank you, Joe and Chris. Great to have you guys here today. So appreciate you taking the time out of your day to chat with us here. All right, so we're going to just move through a couple of conversational pillars, and obviously for our speakers, any feedback you have, feel free to add. And again, for any of our attendees today, if you've got any questions, please utilize the gray GoToWebinar box. There's actually a little chat function, and you can chat in any questions. And what we'll try and do is to move through the webinar, we'll try and make sure we're able to answer the questions for you. And if you have a question for one of the panelists, you can definitely let us know, and we'll look to pass that along. All right, so kind of our first conversational post is the business reasoning. Obviously, no one has unlimited amount of money, and so the determination in terms of purchasing the cameras? There's got to be a business case, right? There's definitely a solid business reasoning behind purchasing them. Mark, when you were looking at kind of the, given kind of that you do not just, the airport charters, but you're also doing specialized transportation, for, specialty groups and special events and things like that. What was really your biggest reasoning behind purchasing the cameras?
Well, like compared to other cameras, my main reason was, for example, we do also interstate travel. Actually, that's our main business, is tours of 10 to 14 days with Europeans, and they will be back. But so those are 12 to 14 days tours. Now, imagine you install a camera with an SD card. There's no SD card that records 14 days.
Right.
So that's a major hassle to fumble with all that. And then if there would be an incident, the driver would have to take it out, save the SD card, put another in, etc., etc. Because that would be in a loop, and everything before when the SD card fills up, it deletes everything. So
Sure.
this system is worry-free, and you don't have to fumble with a device where a hardware device that you have to take out and then look at and then put another one in and go back to the vehicle. And so this is perfect because you have a recording when an incident happens. That's the only recordings you need, is the incident, not a recording on the interstate of 4 hours just going straight ahead on an interstate. Or nothing happens.
So it seems like for you, Mark, this is really this is very closely tied into your business, right? Because this is really giving you not just the peace of mind, but to your earlier comment about having sort of that valid record that you could share with an insurance company, in case any type of incident or event happened. You'd really kind of have that recording just to make it easier than, I know drivers already get stressed when there's some type of harsh event that goes on, but if there was, heaven forbid, an accident, it's nice to know that the driver doesn't have to worry about trying to fumble to try and remove an SD card.
Exactly. And here's another thing that
Right.
for example, in person transportation, in charter bus, when you're driving with passengers. Now let's say on a trip you had somebody fell in the bus. The driver,
Sure.
he had to, but there was an event leading up to it where the driver already said to the people, can you please sit down, this is unsafe, can you please sit down. He could hit that little gray button at the bottom where he would have a recording of the people just refusing to sit down, standing up, talking to people, they're standing in the aisle, etc., etc. And you would never use it, but let's say then later in the day something does happen, then you would have the proof, and that's just the inside camera.
Right.
Then you would have the proof that basically, because the driver can decide when he says that, and then you would have the proof that he told the people to sit down and put on their seatbelts.
Definitely, yeah. We actually have several customers. They've seen accidents unfold in front of them, and while they were themselves at kind of a safe level, they have also hit that driver generated video button, so they are
Yes
recording sort of what is occurring. Sometimes you can kind of see the way that it's going to play out, but you're right, that's especially for driver safety too, right? Because again, you want to make sure that you have something to be able to speak to for the driver, when it comes down to sort of that type of a situation, having that sort of neutral video that showcases the driver kind of speaking with the passengers, and passengers maybe not listening to the driver, and then that's definitely valuable.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Mark. Joe and Chris, and I know you guys actually spent a little bit of time with us before you got to these cameras. You did some earlier testing with us on some other types of camera models, some of the prototypes, which was very helpful, hopefully for you guys as well as for us. But when you were looking at kind of cameras overall, what were kind of your main drivers to actually consider the cameras?
From our standpoint, kind of twofold. The safety obviously is a big and easy one to touch base on. to where that coincides with changing and or updating driver behaviors. And so, as it was alluded to before, sometimes you may think you have a driver that's doing fantastic, but may have some certain habits that we'd like to change or alter. And so the cameras have provided a way to be able to do that, to provide that feedback, to provide a coaching, to be able to let them know that, hey, this was observed, this came up, that, talk through the situation and provide those specific coaching opportunities with, it's not kind of a he said, she said after the fact type thing. The other piece of that, the insurance and the insurance side of things is obviously a huge one. And so it's one of those things to where having that record to be able to do that, we're fortunate to have an incident or two and previous to the cameras, and you start talking about filling out reports and doing all this, the paperwork that can kind of coincide with having to deal with something that could come up. It becomes a lot less stressful, a lot less, guesswork, a lot less. Any of the specifics that you may need for a situation is already right there within your cameras. And so, to me, I know from my standpoint, those were kind of the two biggest ones. It's kind of that safety net for us, in case something does happen, God forbid, there is an accident, there is an incident that comes up, but we know we would have access to that information. And two, being able to help the drivers become better drivers. That provides us those opportunities to make sure that they know and understand that it's not okay to be peeking at your phone even for a little bit or whatever it may be. It just takes that one time for something to happen. And so
Sure.
those are kind of two of our biggest drivers for sure.
Okay, great. Chris,
Yes.
anything to add on that?
I think Joe, hit the main bullet points. I think he did an excellent job. And Mark had talked about it earlier as well. Protects the company from any false claims. The information is there. So we're able to see what happened prior to, during and a little bit after. So it definitely helps protect the company and gives us the information we need. But probably the most important thing, as Joe was saying, right, is changing driver behaviors, right? Whether it's texting, whether it's rolling stops, right, speeding,
Sure.
all those things, that are increasing the likelihood of an accident. It gives us the ability to take a look at them, gives us the ability to get with the driver, change their behavior, reduce accidents, or minimize the chances of having an accident, which will have definitely a positive impact on your insurance premiums. So
Great.
I think
Okay.
Joe hit it spot on.
Yep, agreed. Thank you for that. Okay, so you guys, both of you had brought, or all three of you had brought up a good point about kind of the safety program, right? Because the nice thing about the cameras is that if you don't currently have sort of a formalized safety program, this can be a good tool and it can be very, very helpful. So Joe, when you were setting up, the cameras into your safety program, how did you sort of flow that in terms of kind of building it out and to make sure that you understood kind of what that you were expecting of the drivers, and the drivers sort of understood what you were expecting, so that everyone was kind of aware what that's going to look like?
So that's where I partnered with Chris, and then we kind of established what the expectations were across the board for our drivers, and so for them to understand that this is going to be all right, this is not going to be all right. And so the amazing thing is this system is set up. It's set up to recognize a ton of things, and so we went through. We kind of listed, what our priorities are that we're looking at each day, and established a routine for us to be able to look, at the recordings and making sure that we're able to have that system in place to follow up with the drivers after that. And then, on the flip side of that too, in regards to recognition, I will say that I had a situation come up to where a driver reported a near miss, and he let me know the date and time, because he didn't necessarily hit the button to record it, but we were able to go back and find that. And not only did I recognize him, and as kind of one of my star performers for the month, just in regards to our own recognition program, but I was able to take the information from the vehicle that almost struck him and kind of provide that back to that company as well. And so not only, we're finding that it's affecting our safety, but I'm able to share that with others as well.
That's very helpful. Wonderful. Okay. And so let me ask you kind of a related question. So, obviously with the driving that you guys have currently been doing, even before the cameras, you have a safety program in place. How did you sort of handle bringing cameras on board? And I bring this up because I get this a lot. Working with customers and getting the cameras installed. A lot of times I have drivers tell me, I don't really want a camera and I don't see how it's going to help me. And obviously here, what we're looking at on screen is kind of a little snippet from sort of what we call a driver star, which is when the driver does something positive, right? So in this
Mhm.
case, this driver was identified as actually, they could see that there was a vehicle that was about to move over and, created some separation by slowing down. When I show this to drivers and kind of explain to them that it's not just about, we just want to know what you're doing every second of every minute when you're out there working. But how did you address that with your drivers? Any pushback or any type of, fear that you had to overcome with that?
Sure, there's initial hesitation with any change that we implement. Especially for drivers that haven't had any issues, in the past, and kind of talking them through, how this is beneficial for us and how it, and so from my standpoint, I really took some specific examples on how this is going to help us overall, and explain to them how it's more for their safety. This is not a big brother type of situation. I explained that this is not something that I just click on a button. I look and see what the driver's doing at that particular time. I said, absolutely not. I said, I don't have the time nor the want to be able to do that. And
Sure.
so I wanted to make sure that they understood that, hey, this is really for in case something happens, that we're able to show what had happened. We'll have all the information available to us, and really make sure that it keeps you safe. So if something happens and somebody claims something, and we could prove to the contrary that that's only a win for them, and then on the flip side too, I said, it's good because it is pointing out stuff that can come back and bite us in the backside if we don't address. So if we had, and Chris can attest to it too, there's
Mhm.
folks that had a tendency to be on the phone, and it's like, we had to establish that, this is not acceptable, and make sure that we're coaching those folks, and really work to change those behaviors. And so even in the short time that we've had the cameras kind of running full tilt, it's made a tremendous change in driver behavior in a very short time. And then once they realized it and they kind of got past the initial shock, we haven't had any issues since.
Oh, that's great. Okay, good, good.
That is good. I mean, there is some initial hesitation at first, right? Any change, and as Joe said, right, it's not necessarily, big brother watching, but, the first couple of weeks, I think that there's some hesitations. They're not sure about it, but then it just becomes, then they forget about it. At least what I've seen is, after about a couple of weeks, I mean, they don't even worry about it anymore. And Joe did a good job, and, and the Northwest, kind of going over the benefits of it, and then it just kind of becomes part of their normal routine. And they do understand the importance of it. The recognition portion is fantastic, so we're recognizing and encouraging the good behaviors. Speaking to and trying to change those I guess bad behaviors, but it definitely works out. So I mean, after about 2 weeks, as I mentioned, right? I mean, they stopped mentioning anything about them.
Chris, I think we may have lost you for a second there. Sounds like you were cutting off.
Well, I apologize.
Oh, no problem.
So I
You
was just
you
speaking
mentioned
about
that
the benefits, and after about a couple of weeks, it just became part of the regular routine. So any change initially, right? They had some questions, right? There were some
oh, sure.
hesitations, but after a couple of weeks, I think they understood the benefits that the cameras actually had to offer.
Okay, great. Perfect.
And I'll be honest,
Okay.
and for me, it was beneficial as well in that, and I've done some driving in the trucks. And so, it's like I was able to get in and relate with them and kind of be able to pass that along as well. So they kind of saw that, it's not for, it's going for everybody. Everybody's going to kind of keep an eye out for us. And then they had a good understanding that this is really only going to help us.
Perfect. Okay, wonderful. So Mark, I know that you have a slightly different driving style given your business, but in terms of your safety program, how did you roll the cameras, into it?
Same with us, with the older drivers being more hesitant and doing this project in June and July, because that's the last work we did. Everything else I drove myself, which is, very little work.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so the older drivers, yeah, kind of had an issue with, but I'd explain it to them. Then, and once they used it, and or get um, meaning that after about a week or something, they stopped talking about it. It's just part of the bus now. It's
Mm-hmm.
really not an issue anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and well, the argument from Big Brother is there anyway. Everybody had to sign up, has to sign some paperwork here at the office, driver application. Now the DOT um, has a new program, Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse, where the driver has to register, the company has to register. So Big Brother is there anyway. It's just part of being a commercial driver now.
Right.
And
Right.
so, being professional drivers, having a special license, a passenger endorsement, they understand. They understand. And especially when you say, well, it doesn't record all the time. They don't get that. It's not like it's recording all the time. No, an event triggers a
Mm-hmm.
recording.
Yeah.
So,
Very good.
well, it's how you bring it basically to the driver.
Yeah, and that's an important part too, right? Because again, it's not just like it's something extraneous. This is pretty closely tied to safety. It's definitely one of the I think the key parts of safety, and I think sort of having that conversation with them really does help to help the drivers to understand how over time, again, this is something that will help to benefit them, hopefully in the long run.
Yeah, one of the older drivers, I showed him one of the videos, and it was really funny because the car in front of him hit the brakes and made an illegal U-ey. I made an illegal U. Hit the brakes, made a little U, and then of course the inside camera, the camera facing him, sees him, frightened, and he hits the brakes because he has to. So he had kept enough distance because he didn't hit the car, and then you see him turning, looking at that car and cursing. So luckily there's no audio, but
Right.
he definitely cursed, and then it only came back to him when he saw the recording. He didn't remember it.
Ah, okay.
But
Okay.
we laughed at it together. So basically, again, showing him all the excellent feature. If this would have been an accident, obviously the car in front would be at fault, and that's not so simple because if you hit another car in the back, that is really hard to prove that you had enough distance and you should be able to stop. And this
Mm-hmm.
video would have um, given a tool to our insurance company. Says, look at this car. They hit the brakes because they're going to make an illegal UE, no blinker. They just hit the brakes, and an accident, it didn't occur. But if an accident would have occurred, we would have a leg to stand on. Without this video, we would not have had a leg to stand on because you always have to keep your distance. You should always be able to brake, but not in a case where somebody just slams the brakes and makes an illegal UE.
Right. Right. Yeah, and that's important too, right? You can take all the time in the world to train your drivers and hire, the best drivers and make sure they're doing a good job. And they're only part of it, right? There's all the other drivers out there who are, not trained and there's a lot of wildness going out on road driving in the US today.
Exactly. So this camera, when you hit somebody in the back, ooh, that's really hard to prove. But the video might prove that you're not at fault.
Hmm.
Luckily,
Definitely.
actually, it was kind of a funny video to break the ice. This older driver to break the ice about how valuable this camera is.
Right. hopefully it helped him to kind of overcome, his fear or maybe his apprehension when he kind of saw, firsthand how it could sort of help him in his role, right? So it's not just the driver's role against, the other driver. Now there's some actual proof behind it.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Mark. All right, we've kind of gotten into this a little bit, but obviously, one of the benefits of having the cameras is that you're getting these video recordings that come from harsh events, and those can be a wide range of things. Those can be, obviously some drivers that are accelerating harshly, or they're braking suddenly, they're doing harsh left or right turns. But there's also some things that you can see as part of more of an alert type of status, and these are things where maybe the driver is, distracted, or the driver is trying to eat and drink while they're driving, or maybe they're yawning. You've got a driver that's, maybe picked up an extended shift. So these are all things that you can actually utilize the camera and utilize the video to show the driver and have that kind of conversation in terms of, sort of coaching. So Mark, in terms of sort of your coaching, you just mentioned kind of talking, to the older driver. Are there any other tools that you've utilized, over the years in terms of, or I guess probably not even years isn't the correct thing, but over the last couple of months in terms of, how you think you might change any more of the coaching because you've got the camera footage to kind of share with the drivers, or does it simply just kind of seamlessly blend in?
It will be part of the next, so in the next fall, or maybe in the early spring, we will have a safety a meeting seminar. We will be driving with the bus, and then we will also involve the cameras in our training. So it
Oh,
will be a
perfect.
defensive training. It will be a defensive training class with the vehicle, with the drivers as passengers, show them different driving styles, etc., and then also explain all the features of the camera, because not all drivers have been aware of this yet, because only my very senior drivers have been driving this year, very
Okay.
little, only my senior drivers. So my other drivers, not so senior and part-time drivers, have not been trained in this camera yet. So it will be part of our defensive training class with the vehicle when we start up again,
Okay.
which is
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, that sounds like it'd be a very good addition.
it would be an addition as part of the defensive driving class. This camera would be involved, explaining all the features.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very good. Wonderful. Thank you for that. Chris, in terms of your driver coaching, I know you guys currently have, some coaching that's
Mhm.
built into your current safety program, but how do you utilize the cameras?
Well, I mean, we instituted these into our driver safety policy. The information, as we've been talking about, I mean, there's a lot of tools and there's a lot of information that we are given. But with anything else, I mean, we need to utilize it. So we can't just have the cameras there. And if we're recognizing some questionable behavior and not doing anything about it, I mean, you're not going to have the same results. So, we have identified really, I guess, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable in regards to our driver safety program. We look at the cameras and we look at the videos, and if we recognize a bad behavior that as a company we have decided that this is not tolerated, then we will, initially coach the drivers accordingly. And another good function is there's actually, when you see a particular video with some driver behaviors that you have identified as behavior that needs to be changed, you can go in there and do some coachings, kind of keep track of that, and then there becomes a certain time with anything else, right? That how many chances you give this guy, and then you have to start. Unfortunately, if they don't change their behavior, and most of them do, I would say 90%, 95% of the drivers, once you show them the video or go over, what you saw, they will change their behavior. And those that don't, well, then I think probably need to be handled a little bit differently, right? It's all about maintaining their personal safety and all the safety on the road as well for all the other drivers out there. So again, the tools are there. I mean, there's an influx of them. Got to use them.
Sure. That's right, because you can have a toolbox full of tools, but if you're not utilizing them, then they're not really helping you too much.
Correct.
Right. And Joe, in terms of kind of setting up, some of your early conversations when you guys first got the cameras, was it something that you felt kind of flowed in pretty easily as part of the coaching? Like, did it blend in, or was it something that you had to kind of, really wrestle to kind of get it into sort of your normal coaching flow?
No, it was really easy to be able to utilize the video that was available. So, if somebody, looking at the phone obviously is the most, is the common one that we're trying to change the most.
Hmm.
It's really easy. You just, when I grabbed them, I pulled them in and just be like, hey, this is what we got. This is not acceptable, and
Hmm.
find out the expectation for what needed to happen next, and then we were good after that. And so it was almost easier because there was no he said, she said type of stuff,
Right.
or coming up with an excuse for whatever's going on. I mean, at that point, it doesn't matter. You're in the truck, you're looking at your phone, you're distracted, can't have it. And so it was pretty straightforward, and it made it a lot easier for myself to be able to do those type of coachings. And
Perfect.
to go,
Okay.
yeah, and to coincide with the other items that are available there too, the other pieces that I'm using as I look at that every day is I'm kind of looking for trends that are established. So if somebody is constantly coming up with following too close, or that is just driver distraction, driver distraction, we're kind of able to, one in particular may not be, a big hit or something. You can kind of explain it away, but if you continue to see it over and over and over and over again, that's something else that I've been able to bring up with the driver as well.
That's actually an interesting point because, there's patterns, right, in terms of the driving behavior. You can see
Right.
things like the distracted driving, but also, one of the things that I see a lot of is I see a lot of drivers that are yawning. And obviously, they've got very long days. But I do have a customer that kind of noticed for one driver, this poor driver was just struggling. He arrived at like 1 a.m. and, he drove till about 9 in the morning. And this poor driver was clearly just not a morning person. And this morning drive was killing him. And when we were looking at the video, it was literally triggering, for almost every minute of his drive because he was just continuously yawning. And this poor guy it was just a hard shift for him to do. And looking at that and talking with his boss, who was the fleet manager, they kind of talked to the driver and said, look, we're really seeing that you're clearly very tired a lot on these morning shifts. And we never really saw that behavior when you were working, days or afternoons. And so it was helpful. They were actually able to move the driver over to a better shift, something that worked better, which obviously doesn't work, for all organizations, but it did work for him. And it was great to be able to see that because when we actually saw the next video of him, the videos that we happened to see were all positive, right? So these were things where the driver was alert. We actually saw him very clearly, no yawning. So it's nice to kind of get that also, that trend predictor and also kind of see some of those patterns because I think that really gives you, the people that are managing the business and the drivers a lot more information in terms of, is this working? Do we need to make some changes here? What do we do about this? So I think it's just helpful information all around.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that, Joe and Chris. All right. So kind of overall, so we've talked about, a few things kind of high level. We did kind of allude a little bit to insurance companies. And I know that, obviously from an insurance company perspective, there's a couple of things that come into play. Obviously, having cameras helps you kind of, as Mark defined, of actually having the video to be able to share, in case there's any type of an incident and, finger pointing gets started. So clearly that's a nice thing to have. But also in terms of when you look at how much a business spends for any type of accident, even if it's a minor fender bender or heaven forbid, something that's way larger and much more serious of an event, that has a lot of monetary effects, right? That causes increases in your insurance rates. Based on the driver and company, you could also kind of get docked for that. There's obviously, things like lawsuits and having to replace equipment if vehicles get destroyed. So there's a lot of kind of fallout from those types of things. And Chris, I know you and I had spoken a little bit about insurance. So in terms of utilizing the cameras, Maybe you can share with the listeners today in terms of how you see that sort of playing out in terms of, being a benefit to you over the course of a year when you look back at 12 months use of the cameras.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think, at least in our company, I don't imagine in most, right? Your insurance rates are based upon your risk, right? And they look at previous years. And so these cameras, again, I mean, one of the main reasons we got them was to reduce accidents, and how you do that, again, changing driver behavior, minimizing that risk out there. So in real simple terms, right, the less accidents you have, the less money the insurance company has to pay out, more than likely the better rates you're going to have in the future. And so it's been beneficial, and I've been debating whether to say this or not, but I'm going to knock on wood here. So we have been 5 months incident free. I mean, is it attributed all to the cameras? I mean, I think a lot of it is, right? I mean, I think that Joe, as Joe has spoken about it, has really embraced this, and so has his drivers in the Oregon area as well as the California area. There's FICO scores, and I think some of these drivers, all of these drivers are very competitive, and so they want to have some of the highest, I guess, safety scores, FICO scores. How do you do that? Well, you have some of the best behaviors there, right? And what does that do? It minimizes and mitigates the risk out there. I think in a nutshell, that's it, right? So the less money the insurance companies have to pay out, the better rates you're going to have.
Definitely. Okay, great. Mark, from your side, in terms of, obviously you mentioned having the video handy, but how do you kind of view the topic of insurance? Do you feel that having the cameras, at the end of the calendar year is going to be a benefit to you and help you out?
It will when we go in full operation, of course, because at this point, my insurance is for theft and burglary only. So we are not in full liability for our fleet. We basically email our broker and say, for that day we need that vehicle.
Okay.
At that point, I really don't have any information on it. I do know that there will be a discount if we go in full operation when also liability is included, because that's a major thing in our insurance. So instead of a little over $9,000 a month, I'm paying a little over $2,000 a month just to keep the vehicles insured because they're leased. But at this point, liability is not there, because that's what across the industry in the charter bus industry is happening. That's what the insurance companies are doing, because they don't have a choice. Otherwise, the whole industry will disappear, because nobody more impacted than the charter bus industry. It doesn't get into the news, but the charter bus industry is basically in non-operation except for Department of Defense contracts. There's no schools, there's no international travel, there's no business travel, there's no wedding, there's no concerts, there's no games, there's no spectators at the stadiums. So we're basically in hibernate. We're hibernating, but that is a given. I know that my insurance, Lancer Insurance, will give a discount for the cameras when we go into operation, and we'll have the full liability insurance. So I have no numbers on that.
Yeah, once you get there, it'll be, but it's good to know that that's something that is available to you.
Yes, it is. Lancer Insurance will have a discount if you have cameras installed.
Sure. Okay. Very nice. Okay, good. So, obviously we've talked about, the driver safety and also the coach, being able to make sure that you're able to affect safety through driver changes, right? Which makes perfect sense, obviously, and using the camera as a tool to that, and then being able to benefit from some of the, the insurance elements. So hopefully over time, with also, reduced or non-existent accidents, that would hopefully be a positive benefit on your insurance. But let me ask you this. So Joe, are there any other benefits, anything that maybe you weren't expecting? Because obviously you're expecting to kind of have, some tools to see what drivers are doing. But are there any other benefits that you feel kind of outside of, the safety and the coaching and the insurance that were, that you feel are good that you received from having the cameras?
Yeah, I'd alluded to a little bit earlier. I think the recognition portion, we've got the driver stars that are you know, kind of part of the program, but just other things that had come up. You know, it's funny because a driver will get excited, be like, "Oh, you got to check this out," or you know, I put this video in, or whatever it may be, and they kind of showed something positive that had happened or something good, or you know, even the, you know, it was a near miss, so that wasn't good, but at the same time, through their actions they were able to avoid an accident. We were able to take and learn from, so it's things like that that I never would have thought about. You know, I thought it would have been kind of the worst case scenario type stuff, but it's actually there's definitely some positives that will come out of that. And so if I'm able to take even additional safety stuff and share that with somebody else,
Hmm.
and help somebody else even be safe, you know, through equipment that we've got on board. It's pretty cool to be able to have that ability.
Definitely, definitely. And that is, something that you're right. I wouldn't have guessed that that would be something that, you would find on kind of like the top three benefits, but that definitely is a benefit because anything you can do and we can all do to keep people safe out there just benefits all of us. So, which is nice.
Yeah, that was pretty fun to recognize some of those things that had come about with it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think similar to a lot of other people, working from home currently, but what I can say is that I do actually still drive into the office. I go up probably once or twice a week, and I go through some of the, notorious Southern California freeways. I drive the 5 to the 405, which is always an exciting challenge. You never know what you're going to get. And I do find, that I see a lot of interesting behavior from just people driving regular non-commercial vehicles, and I see them, performing actions where I see 18-wheelers and big farm trucks get cut up, or cut off all the time. Same thing with transportation buses. I see that quite frequently, and it always makes me cringe as I'm driving, just thinking, no, 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 don't do that. And obviously, most of the time, it ends up well, where the driver, the commercial driver, is paying enough attention, and he or she is keeping a lookout, and they're well trained, and nothing negative happens, and so everyone's allowed to kind of continue along their day. But yeah, definitely a lot of crazy activity out there, so it's always nice to see those, the recognition for sort of the good driver, right? Because I think a lot of drivers just are preparing to get a lot of negative feedback and negative comments, so it's nice to be able to look at some of the positive driving elements and call those out.
Yeah, I was also excited, you know, just from I've had it happen quite a few times now, to where a driver will come back at the end of the day and be like, "Hey, you got to see what I recorded," or whatever it was. So if I hadn't had a chance to look at it, you know, with something that had come up, and you know, whether it was something we needed to share, or that was there, it was kind of neat because it was just like, you know, good, bad, ugly, whatever it may be. These are all things that can affect us in one way or another.
Sure, definitely, definitely. Okay, great. Mark, are there any other benefits that that you either have currently experienced or you think that you will experience in the future outside of any of the the driver tools, the safety, or the insurance elements?
Oh, I, I, I would agree with my colleagues that the driving habits is maybe something I haven't mentioned yet.
Hmm.
That's what I will see in the future. You know, as a that will definitely improve, uh,
Okay.
as we have seen with other with other from changing from paper locks to electronic locks.
Hmm.
There's a great a major discomfort with a lot of truck companies and bus companies when that went into vogue, where we went from paper locks to electronic locks, and now most companies wish, this is absolutely great, no paperwork, everything is electronic, and that will be the same with these cameras. So
Hmm.
the driving habits definitely when you're in full operation, um, the driving habits, because ultimately that will prevent damage. And not, without even accident related, how many incidents we have where the bumper is scratched on the side, the bumper is cracked, the driver pulled away from a tree but made a sharp turn while doing that and popped two windows. I mean, passenger windows,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera, et cetera. So I think over time that will, the damage to our buses will be lower as well. So that's maybe another advantage. Now, not particularly an accident, because we have $1,000 deductible. It's just, we don't call our insurance all the time. We replace the bumper, it's polyester, we fix it, we repaint it, and we're done with it. But it adds up over the years, has been adding up. Another example, hubcaps.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
We have all these beautiful chrome hubcaps, and they just get damaged. They drive into the curb.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that will be. That wasn't me.
Having a hard time hearing you, Mark.
Oh,
Yeah, Mark,
sorry.
I think you're fading out just a bit there.
Yeah, so I love that phrase from the drivers. It wasn't me. That's what I hear all the time. When there's a scratch on the bus or there's a hubcap that's
Sure.
destroyed or damaged, oh, it wasn't me. And then sometimes that's really hard, because on the same day, maybe two different drivers drove that vehicle.
Sure.
And then the other driver didn't do his inspection properly, and oh, this was from here before. No, that was another bus. This bus had no problems with the hubcaps. They were in pristine condition.
Right.
And so which driver was it then? The one from the morning or the one from the afternoon? But guess what? They both say it wasn't me.
Right. Right.
So I see a savings there as well on damage to the vehicles without being related to an accident.
Right. That's a good point. Good point. Wonderful. Well, I do have one question that came in, and Chris and Joe, this one seems like this is specifically more of your territory. We've got a listener who is in more of the let me see if I can say this correctly, agriculturally focused business. So they're driving a lot of, rough roads, which I'm sure you guys are pretty versed in. And so they were wondering, do you feel that the cameras work well in sort of those off-road settings, or as well as, you would be expecting it to do in more of a highway or a regular nice paved street setting?
I'll take this one, Joe. So yes, and so we deliver to a lot of farms, right? We deliver to a lot of our customers don't have the paved roads, and so when we were testing out some of the previous cameras, we were forever getting alerts for bumpy roads, right? I mean, the truck goes back and forth, and boy, I spent a lot of time. I mean, there wasn't anything wrong. I mean, it was just the road. I mean, there were some potholes. I mean, it's dirt. With these cameras here, I'm getting that information. So it's more on the phone, as Joe had talked about, or rolling stop signs, or yawning, or things of that nature that really are driver behaviors that need to be changed. And so, I mean, it's been fantastic since about half of our customers are in these farms and in these agricultural areas.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard word.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Nice. Nice. Yeah, I utilize the camera myself, but I am not driving the same roads. I'm driving more paved roads. So, okay, good to get that feedback. Wonderful. So I only have one other question that has come in here through one of our listeners, and they were wondering about ELD. And Chris and Joe, I don't know, do you guys flow under ELD? Does that apply to you within your current setting?
Yes.
It does. Yeah, so we have
Okay.
ELD. So we have the ELD and we have the
Okay, perfect. And obviously, ELD is mandated, but yeah, exactly.
Electronic
So
log display. Yes.
while ELD is something, yeah, yeah. Have you had a chance? Has there been any opportunity in terms of, trying to, when you're running sort of ELD, anything that happens, maybe a driver, fails to log back in a timely fashion? Have you had a chance to utilize any camera feedback for ELD or with ELD?
No, I personally haven't used the cameras to assist with my ELDs. I mean, our ELDs, those with the same company, I mean, it is separate, right? It's the driver logs,
Sure.
and I'm looking at the hours, making sure that they are logging in, making sure they're taking their lunches. Whereas I have the dash cams, is a lot more safety related. So, the ELDs are regulation related. The cameras are going to be safety related, both extremely important. But we do use them as kind of separate entities.
Makes perfect sense. Yep, definitely.
The only time they could coincide as if there was an issue or incident, you'd be able to utilize the ELD information to locate where the driver is at, and particularly, maybe a route that they were coming or going from and things like that. And so that's about the only way that I think would be able to tie them together.
Right, right.
Well, both of our ELDs and the dashboard cameras are Bluetooth, right? So I think you're able to see exactly the location of the driver on both of our devices.
Definitely. Yep. So you would have sort of that video backup just in case.
Sure, absolutely.
I would agree with that. There's another great feature.
So Mark, Chris,
yeah.
and
so the other great feature is that they're both together. It's basically a tab.
Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Yes, sorry to interrupt. It's basically a different tab.
No problem. Go right ahead.
You don't have to go to a different platform, a different login. It's all together. So you click on hours of service, you click on camera, and it's all there. You just logged in the same platform. But yeah, working together, they're completely different because basically, a camera records an incident, but basically a driver could be getting into the vehicle, forgetting to log in, and then drive really, really well. And it's just that's not what the DOT is looking for. The DOT won't even, they don't care about the cameras. They just care about violations. So those are that's what electronic log devices are for. And the camera is very much a different thing altogether for electronic devices.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. All right. Well, Mark Claessens, we appreciate your time. Chris Dorak, Joe Krebs, appreciate your time as well. Thank you all for participating on our webinar. And you guys have shared some great information. And again, if there's anyone out there that's listening, and if you have any questions that you're just now thinking of, feel free to send them in. You'll get a recording of today's webinar. So you'll see that soon, and you can utilize that to respond back to us with any questions or comments that you have. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time today, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.